Our 2024-25 season previews will continue today with the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken are a very interesting team. They are obviously in their fourth year in the league, which, with our 3-year progression that we've been doing with these season previews, it works out perfectly. So you guys get to see the entire history of the Seattle Kraken at the beginning of this video. So in 21-22 in their first season, they went 27-49-6 for 60 points. They were 30th in the NHL. Now, I don't beat them up at all for being 30th, to be honest with you. I kind of give them props because, honestly, this team didn't really have that many expectations. They came out, I believe the team sold out every single home game, which was very impressive, to be honest with you. When you look in terms of, hockey cities when they first debut, they are exciting, but to sell out every single home game to start, that's a lot. And that makes you really look forward to what this team is building towards the future. That following year in 2022-23, they took a step, and they took a big step. They went 46-28-8 for 100 points. They were 12th in the NHL. They make the playoffs, defeat the Stanley Cup champions, the Colorado Avalanche, in 7 games. They take the Western Conference finalists, the Dallas Stars, to 7 games. They end up losing, but it was a really good season, a really fun year from that Kraken team. They came so close to making the conference finals, giving us a Seattle versus Vegas Western Conference Finals, which would have been terrific, to be honest. The 2 most recent expansion teams, come on, that's awesome. But they ended up taking a big step back this past year, going 34, 35, and 13 for 81 points. They were 25th in the NHL this past year. They missed the playoffs. It was undeniably a step backwards from what this team wanted to do. It sucks, but you see that happen a lot in sports and in hockey especially. Teams will have a surprisingly really good season and then kind of take a step back. Like, look at Jersey. New Jersey was one of those teams that did that this past year. So Seattle wasn't one of them, but they did make a pretty decent amount of moves this past offseason that make you kind of excited for the future. Your departures will start there first. You lost Justin Schultz, Brian Dumoulin, Kailer Yamamoto, Tomas Tatar, and Chris Driedger. First off, Schultz, you'll miss him as some forward depth. I think he was also an original pick from that roster. Dumoulin, same thing, was a good, solid bottom 4 defenseman. Yamamoto didn't work out. It just simply didn't work out when he was here. Tatar, kind of the same thing. They acquired him mid-season. That didn't work out that well either. And then Driedger. Driedger was your third string through a lot of that stretch. So, honestly, wasn't that big of a loss for the Kraken. Unless you're looking at Coachella, which made back-to-back Calder Cup finals, which is another impressive thing. They're a new AHL team that made it to back-to-back. Yeah, anyways. Your arrivals, you have Chandler Stevenson, Brandon Montour, Mitchell Steffens, Ben Myers, and Josh Mahura. So, overall, the big are really focused on Stevenson and Montour, and there was a lot of people who criticized these in the media, saying that, they're overpays, these deals aren't going to look good in the future. I think with the salary cap rising, and I think that with, the way contracts are, these guys will do good in the short term. Long term might be a little bit rough for Seattle. I'm not really too sure. Some of the moves they've made this past offseason made me really question that a little bit. But I think that the new adds of Montour and Stevenson are, first off, cup tax. Both of these guys have won Stanley Cups with their respective teams in the last 2 seasons. So, obviously, there's a cup tax there. But, again, I think that, they really do improve. Montour improves that blue line. Stevenson, that's probably your number 1 or number 2 center. That works out very well. And then the rest of those guys, Stevens, Myers, Mahura, are just guys that are going to be depth. They're not going to be big impact guys. They are depth. Solely depth. Let's get into your projected lineup per the Hockey News. Let's start with your top 6. Jared McCann, Chandler Stevenson, Jordan Eberle is your first line. Then you have Jaden Schwartz, Matty Beniers, and Oliver Bjorkstrand as your top 6. So that's not a bad top 6. Again, Stevenson, your number 1 center. That's a good add there. I think that they got pretty strong down the middle now with the Stevenson ad, so I like that. You have two very solid, honestly underrated guys in McCann and Eberle. They are, kind of like McCann does really good offensively. I'm surprised Eberle's not the captain yet, to be honest with you. I figured he would be named the captain, but haven't really heard anything in regards to that. Maybe it goes to Beniers. Honestly, who knows? I like the second line too. Bjorkstrand was a good ad at the middle of last year. I think that he is going to have a good year for Seattle as well. And then Matty Beniers, you need a bounce back year from him. You need this guy to at least get back to remotely what he was in his rookie season. If he can, that's terrific. If he doesn't, then you got some real issues there with the Kraken forward. But I think he will. I think that he can with this overall roster. I think he's going to have a really good chance to really bounce back and maybe even have a much better season than previous years before. Your bottom six, you have Brandon Tanev, Yanni Gourde, Andre Burakovsky as your third line. Then you got Ty Cartier, Shane Wright, and Eli Tolvanen as your fourth line. Then you have Michelle Steffens, Ben Myers, and John Hayden as some extra depth, or the fifth line. Blue Jackets fans won't like that, though. You have a good bottom six there. I like that third line. Very experienced. That's a line that can probably score you some goals if it's healthy at that. And I love that fourth line. Cartier, Wright, and Tolvanen. That's a young fourth line. Shane Wright, probably going to make this roster with Dan Bosma being named the new head coach. So I really like that fourth line. Cartier was the guy from the playoffs last year that came in and really had a good season. I think that he can make the lineup full time this year. And Tolvanen too had a really good stretch as well for Seattle last year. So hopefully he can do that as well. And again, this is a solid forward core. It's not a great forward core, but it's a very solid forward core. It's deep, lots of depth. Don't be surprised if Seattle sneaks into the playoffs this year with that forward core. Got to be honest. Your defense is also, I would say, pretty deep. You have Dunn and Larson as your first pairing, and then you have Alexiak and Montour as your second pairing, and you have Evans and Borgen and Will Borgen as your third pairing, and then you have Josh Mahura as your seventh D. So Riker Evans was a guy that came up from Coachella. He played a couple games this year, I think more than a couple actually. He looked very solid. Borgen, same thing. But I'm excited to see how those guys are going to do. Again, we know what the top four can do. Montour was a great first pairing defenseman. He might get limited down to the second pairing role. He probably will play first pairing, though, over Larson. Even though Larson did just get an extension, he probably will play over him. But I love that blue line. I love Dunn. Dunn's so underrated in Seattle. I think him and Montour could do some damage. I like Alexiak as well. Big hitting defenseman. It's a pretty solid defense tandem, to be honest with you. Your goaltending is Joey Dackard and Philip Grubauer. So Grubauer, we already know that he's probably going to be the backup goalie. Dackard, it's a question. Now, I think that he can do what I'm about to say, but the question is, can he keep up what he did in the second half of last year? Because what he did in the second half of last year was terrific. His numbers were great. For a team that was out of the playoffs, his numbers were actually pretty good. But the thing is, you have to look at there is, well, can he repeat that? If he goes back to a much worser form, or back to, I don't really know what his regular form is because he hasn't really played that much. If he goes back to, or if he regresses, I guess is a better term for it, this team could be in a really bad spot with that, because I don't know if Grubauer's really at the stage in his career to really save this Kraken team. So that could be something that definitely causes some concern if he does start off really slow, but I don't think Dackard will do that. Dackard's a very solid goalie. I think that he proved himself in the NHL last year. He will be that guy for sure, and I think he's going to make things pretty exciting for the Kraken. Let's go over to the Hockey News' yearbook and fantasy guide. They have the Kraken 5th in the Pacific. Their cup odds are 45-1. Their X factor is rebounds by Beniers and Burakovsky would replace much of the missing offense. Still, it could be moot if Dackard suffers a regression after his breakout season, but if he proves he's more than a 3-month mirage, Seattle might remind folks why it was a win away from the Western Conference Final 2 years ago. So again, you need bounce back from Beniers and Burakovsky. I think you're going to get that, though. I like how this team's built to be really deep, and I think that, these guys are really going to flourish. And you got guys like Balsma coming up as the coach, and Jessica Campbell. Like, those are two coaches who were down below in Coachella Valley, was with a lot of the young players down there. And I think that overall, like, they could really surprise people this year. Like, guys like Shane Wright, guys like Cartier, guys like Evans, guys who played down in the minor league will be able to really get a chance to make this roster and flourish, to be honest. So I think they're doing a really good job with what they have done. And I think that there's some things that have made me question, like some of these extensions, some of these signings have made me be like, I don't really know about that. But overall, I really like what Seattle is building. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I don't really know if this team is going to be a playoff team. I have them probably just barely outside looking in. I could see them get in, though, if there's one team in the Pacific that really kind of struggles. I could see Seattle getting in then. But anyways, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe down below. I greatly appreciate it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.